some of the things that he was doing was just so mind-boggling, where it legit seemed like he was running an offense on Madden. I know it was a joke on Twitter, but sometimes his routes were literally the four verticals that you see on Madden. And it was so infuriating because there was no creativity, no motion, no pre-snap motion. They weren't using Josh Allen to his strengths. There wasn't any play action. And the way that the Bills lost last year to Cincinnati, I said, look, I know they were decimated with injuries, the whole DeMar Hamlin thing that happened, but this team was not going to win because they got outcoached. They could have had a fully healthy roster, and they got outcoached defensively and offensively. And I thought the game plan was terrible. So I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I said, okay, let's just regroup and try to come back together this year. And you could just see how slow and lethargic that the Bills offense was. I mean, look at all those memes where Josh Allen had the long hair and he just looked so distraught. And, you know, he was talking about that low positive energy and trying to find himself. And then the moment they fire Ken Dorsey, he's on the sideline saying, I feel like I'm back. And right then and there, you could just see that energy. And Sean McDermott talked about it too. Just the different vibes and the mojo that this offense finally had. I mean, Josh Allen is the dude. Let him be the dude. And I know Ken Dorsey did, as we'll get into some of the numbers here. But I just don't think that Dorsey played to Allen's strengths. And the offense was just way too simplistic, way too vanilla. There wasn't enough creativity. And if I'm a defensive coordinator, it was very easy to game plan on the Buffalo Bills prior to them firing Ken Dorsey. So look at these numbers between Joe Brady and Ken Dorsey. I'm not going to read all of them here because you can see them, but they are very, very similar. And the three most important there at the top, I mean, these are including the two playoff games. So 10 games with Dorsey, 9 with Brady. The Bills averaged 26.2 points with Dorsey, just over 27 with Brady. And then also with Brady, they averaged, 8 more yards than with Dorsey? Very, very similar. Touchdowns, they had more with Dorsey than with Brady. But the key is at the end, the turnovers. 18 turnovers with Ken Dorsey, only 9 with Brady. And I think this kind of transitions us into what I wanted to say about Joe Brady, because the other key stat right there is the rushing yards. And you alluded to this, Kevin. 161.2 rushing yards per game under Joe Brady, only 116.5 with Ken Dorsey. So I think that is the key difference right there. When you have Ken Dorsey, who called 64% of the plays were passing plays, only 36% of the time they were running. And then you go to Joe Brady, he called a passing play on 54% of the plays, and then runs were 46%. So he was very well balanced. And I think that was what the Bills needed, because then you could see how they would milk out these long sustaining drives. And then they would play that complementary football that McDermott always talks about. And one of the key games was in Los Angeles when they had to run the clock out, or maybe even a better example against Dallas. They just ground and pound all day. And that's how they beat the Cowboys. Josh Allen really didn't have to do that much because it was James Cook show. And then I know Josh Allen had to do a little bit more against the Chargers, but again, I just remember those long sustaining drives, and then they turn it over to the defense, let them do the job, game over. And they even went on those long sustaining drives against Kansas City. I like the game plan. It's just they didn't execute in the end. So I think that's the biggest difference right there. When Joe Brady took over, he started to utilize his running backs. He started to throw to James Cook. He knew how to use Ty Johnson or Latavius Murray or Leonard Fournette when he was in. Khalil Shakir, if you look at his numbers, Shakir skyrocketed after Joe Brady took over. He was essentially a nobody before. Same with Dalton Kincaid. Now, I know he had some good games under Ken Dorsey, but for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the year, we were like, really? You traded up to get this guy and now you don't know how to use him? So he took off after Joe Brady took over. So I think that is my biggest takeaway right there. That was like the definition of the argument. When Ken Dorsey was such a polarizing figure here, people kept pointing to the numbers and the DVOA, the EP, like all this stuff. And well, the numbers are there. Look at they're averaging 370 yards per game, and they're scoring 30 touchdowns and 26 points per game. What more do you want? Well, I want you to understand how to use the players that are on your roster, and I want you to understand how to throw to your running backs and try to get everyone involved. And I think that's what Joe Brady did. And to your point, he has a full offseason to put his own wrinkles into it. You would think that Brandon Beane is going to build up the wide receiver room for him. You run it back with the same offensive line. You have Josh Allen again. And I am feeling very good about this Joe Brady hire.